we had a big refugee center set up in my city, and there was a need for volunteers who could speak Ukrainian or Russian. And so I immediately became interested. And although back then, my Russian level was lower.
Welcome, everybody, to a new exciting episode of the Connected by Language podcast, the show that finds the most dedicated language learners out there and tries to learn from their craft. I'm your host, Michele, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Michelle.
So, for the people that are joining in for the first time, I think it would be nice to kind of give us a little bit of introduction about ourselves, where we're from, what languages do we speak, and what we're all about.
Yeah, so I'm Michelle from Germany. I speak German, English, French, and Spanish, and a little bit
of Brazilian Portuguese.
Yes.
Let's not forget about that one.
No, I don't. And I work as a language education specialist at Tandem.
And what is Tandem?
So Tandem is a language exchange app. You can exchange languages with people from all over the world, so you can practice either one-on-one or in group live language learning that we call language parties.
And there are over 300 different languages that you can explore on Tandem. So no matter what type of objective you're looking for, whether to get your speaking practice up or just sharing or memes from around the world with cool people, you will always find the perfect language partner for you. And you might find people inside the app like me. Hi, my name is Michele. I come from Italy. I speak French, English, Italian, a little bit of Japanese, and a little bit of German. And I'm just sort of somebody that likes to talk about different languages, different cultures, and meet people who their life got changed because of the world of languages. But today we're actually going to do something a little bit special in the terms of the Connected by Language universe. We're going to take one of our oldest episode, our third episode. Do you remember what our third episode is? This is a little bit of a pop quiz.
Oh, that's difficult.
Yeah,
we
there's
have
a
done
lot.
so many.
Yeah, there's a lot of episodes, so I'm sorry that I'm putting you on the spot, but let's see if you remember it. Don't worry, I'll give you the answer if you don't.
Maybe it was the one about Czech Republic?
Exactly. Yeah. You're right. In our third episode of the Connected by Language podcast, we sat down with somebody that had a very interesting situation. It was somebody that already had a lot of Russian language experience, and out of a sudden, he had to survive in the middle of the Czech Republic, kind of figuring out the language there. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to kind of do the opposite of this, where we're going to take somebody that has been living in the Czech Republic for so long, but has dedicated his life into learning the language of Russian. But this little bit of an experience not only has found out very interesting ways into figuring out an entire language on your own, but what happens when the language that you've been just speaking for hobby becomes something that actually matters in a very, very dire situation? We're going to explore both things today on this episode, thanks to our wonderful guest, Petr. Petr, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hi, welcome. I'm very excited to learn about your own Russian language adventure because I think a lot of people, especially for Russian being a language that is fairly popular among all the broader language learning community, might have something very, very special to take it into their own, I guess, mindset as we go forward. But before we do that, actually, I want to ask you a little bit of a question. Can you give us maybe a little bit of a personal journey and what you're all about?
Sure, I would start with what I do professionally. So I work in linguistics as a freelancer, offering various services such as proofreading, editing, translating, a little bit of language tutoring as well. And I have a few interests. Language learning is one of them. Playing the guitar is another, as you might maybe see behind me. And these things are a bit connected too. We might get to it later.
Ooh, yeah, music and languages often do go hand in hand in a lot of different ways. So I'm very excited to see how you personally are using the language, but the language and music. But maybe it's a little bit later. I would like to ask you more about your growing up and your relationship with languages. So I may ask you, growing up, like, how did you see the concept of languages and what type of role did they play in your early life back then?
Great question. Well, I would say until the age of maybe 20, it was really just a subject. Uh, so by that I mean English. Uh, so
Mm.
I yeah. So I basically started learning English in the 90s in the Czech Republic, and back then, me and a lot of my schoolmates, we didn't really feel that this language could be useful in some way.
Mm.
So I remember, yeah, I was kind of struggling. Like I didn't have the worst grades, of course, but to be honest, many times in my life, I found myself surprised that I actually reached my level of English.
Mhm.
If I look back and remember those days at primary school, secondary school, when I was more or less struggling.
Mm.
And what actually changed that picture of languages for you?
Right. It was certainly the internet and the first I would say prehistoric language exchange sites, because
Mm.
we didn't speak about applications back then,
Yeah,
but
it was a completely different time back then, which I
yeah.
do not know of. So it's
So it's like 20 years ago. There was a very famous and popular site called Share Talk by Rosita Stone. I believe it doesn't exist anymore. It was very simple, very basic. But what you were able to do was that you could log in and you could start chatting to another person, and you could choose. You saw like where the person was from. So just a few clicks, and you could chat to someone from Brazil, from Africa, from Asia. There was also a very basic voice chat, you know,
Ooh. Oh.
and yeah. So I started to like this kind of exploring of the world, talking to people from completely different parts of the world, and yeah, I enjoyed, making sentences, being understood, learning something new. So that was big breakthrough.
And if languages were not really like your thing until then, how did it change? How did you actually get to the Rosetta Stone page that you just talked about? How did the transition happen?
Hmm. Well, probably some kind of curiosity, which has always been within me.
Yeah.
And I also remember I started to travel a bit. So it kind of went hand in hand, these things together.
And it's interesting because, like, in this type of perspective, like, one thing that I thought was very interesting that you said was that you thought that that English was not that useful for the future, which is something that at least when I started like learning English, it was the complete opposite. It was always presented as like the key to finally achieving freedom if you don't learn your English right. Now, a lot of people in my like, being in school, of course, not everybody's gonna be like conforming to that, and it's not that everybody likes learning English as much, or it's a
Mm.
subject like everybody every other ones for a lot of people, but it was presented in a very different way. It's interesting to see because I'm not really sure how like Germany felt about the English language.
I think in school it was not a thing yet that you could really think about then traveling, being able to communicate to other
Yeah,
cultures of the world. I don't remember any of that. It
really.
was really just a subject to me.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it's also the age gap.
Oh,
No.
probably like because at my time, like when I was starting learning English, like the very early stages of the internet were already kind of over. Like people already
Yeah.
could grasp the concept of someone not from Italy talking to you online. It was not like this like grassroots thing. Of course, it was not like nowadays where you can go on an app like Tandem and just like find bajillions of people from all over the world ready to talk. But it was at least understood that there's a world out there, and you don't you there's a it's not that hard to explore it. I don't know if I got
Mm.
this concept through, but
Yeah, I think for me, actually, it was more, and maybe it was similar to you, Petr, that we were talking about neighbor countries. So that
mhm,
was more the thing. So it was not
yeah,
about the internet because it was not really existent during the time that I went to school, or it was existent, but we didn't use it as a
yeah,
tool.
not as much for sure.
Exactly. And then it was all about learning French, for example, because we were not
Really?
living so far from the French border. So, and the first language exchange I ever did was not like on tandem online, but it was really like going with my school class to France and then meeting people there. And there it was all about communication and being able to communicate to the French people. So that was like the first time it really made sense to learn a language.
I see. And it's also very interesting to see like how this all the like versions of language exchange work, because like in nowadays my first thought is how do they securely know where people are coming from? I could just put whatever I want in, like I guess back in the day there was a lot of quirks to find, but it's so interesting that you could like get things like voice chat from around the world
Mhm.
already like somewhat consistently. That's a lot more impressive than people might realize. Uh,
Mhm.
but now, like your situation was interesting. Now, you were someone that didn't really quite got a lot of interest in languages. You found this gold mine of people from around the world. But I would assume, knowing your like your story, that one language maybe, let's just say, stood out from the other. So my question becomes like, why did you like not why, but it's more like when. When did you decide to take on Russian as a language to begin with?
Mm. Much later, uh, basically when I turned, yeah, 30, I would say,
Okay.
around that age, 10 years ago. So before that, I should mention that okay, you said that I wasn't so interested in languages. It's only partly true because I studied Czech Czech
Ah,
philology, like Czech language, Czech
okay.
literature. But the reason why I decided for this subject was more the literature than the language back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is one link. I will mention it a bit later. I guess that when I felt that my English was already good enough, uh, I thought it would be probably great to, yeah, to learn another language because I remember I had friends and I knew people who spoke several languages. Yeah, not only English but also German, French, Italian. So I kind of felt that it's possible.
Okay.
And then, yeah, then it was the time to decide which one I should take up.
And there was like, if was there like something specific that said like I need to do Russian, or was it just like a educated like guess?
Yeah, there were a few reasons for sure. Uh, some of them were very practical
Mhm.
because for a Slavic person, learning another Slavic language is easier, smoother, faster. Uh, another big reason was that I had always been interested in the post-Soviet world.
Mhm.
So not only Russia, but also the other countries, in Central Asia, South Caucasus mountains, mountains too, but countries as well. And I knew that knowing Russian basically opens the gates to a huge part of the world. I always say like basically from Riga nowadays all the way to Vladivostok or even further. So
Mhm.
I saw those practical implications, but I remember I listened to some Russian bands.
Yeah.
I like some movies. Yeah,
So, so you had a lot of opportunities to kind of get all of the different angles of a language, because that's one of the great, I think, advantages of languages. Because first of all, it's like a type of hobby that is not really like age coded. Like you don't need to start the joy of learning languages at when you're specifically a child. Like, let's say, for example, that you want to start a sport to go to the Olympics, for example. You need to kind of start early, and you can kind of miss your chance. Of course, it's not impossible, but like it's always recommended that you start a little bit early.
Mm.
And sometimes we're like languages are very accessible, anybody can do it, and it's everywhere. We've seen so many people on the show coming in and be like, oh, I love this part of the culture, I need to learn from it. In your case also, Michelle, like your connection to dancing and Spanish kind of came in together, right?
Yeah.
So I can't say the same for myself. For me, it was mostly practical. I'm sorry. But yeah, like you said, it's like there's some practicality out of it because you can unlock most of the world. For me, it was I need to survive. But once you know a
Mm.
little bit of French, you can kind of go in other places in the world. So I guess it's a little bit of an extra bonus. But it's always nice to see how many ways you can get involved into languages. And I have to admit, the historical part, that's a new one to go on the board. There's no board; it's like imaginary. But I keeping track of every reason to start languages, and historical parts are, let's just say, a new one.
Mm.
And you actually mentioned that for like you as a Czech Repub, how do you say that? A Czech person. um,
Yeah.
for you, it was easier with like Slavic languages to learn another Slavic language. But it has a different, like Russian has a different alphabet, like the Cyrillic alphabet. So I would be interesting how it was for you then actually switching to the new alphabet and like learning it.
Hmm. Yeah, new alphabets are always a challenge, aren't they?
Yeah, they always are.
Right. I would say that the Russian alphabet, the Cyrillic or Azbuka, isn't one of the hardest ones to learn because many letters are still the same.
Okay.
And I had one big advantage because when I studied Czech philology at university, we had a subject like Old Church Slavonic. Basically, we learned the history of Slavonic languages. And in this subject, we had to learn this old alphabet, which was developed, I think, in like 8th century by some scholars in Greek and so on, in Greece. And because we had to learn it, to write it and to read it, it helped me later with Russian. I mean, it was definitely easier. But I should also say that although I can read well, I haven't really learned the written alphabet. I mean, the handwriting. Okay, the handwriting. So until now, I just use the capital letters, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, I mean, that's a challenging task to learn the Russian handwriting because I find it very difficult.
Yeah, I don't know how many like situation would you need to fully like be attentive on the way that you write your own Russian. I feel like at this point a lot of languages tend to kind of be sort of like a pastime when it comes to the written part. It's just a shame, of course, but it is like with this also like digitally, you don't really need to learn the handwriting as
Yeah.
much, so you don't have as much pressure.
Mm.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I had a Russian course once, and like a short course where like of 1 week, an intensive course, like a sneak peek into the language. And our teacher then, she was like very keen on us learning the handwritten letters too. Like we only had this 1 week, and we had just learned the new alphabet, and she was like, okay, here are the like letters. I don't know actually how to call them, not handwritten, and here are the like hand lettering ones. And people were like super stressed and overwhelmed and couldn't like handle both at the same time. And I said, well, I decided for myself, if I want to read Russian in today's world, like it will probably be on the phone. So I will kind of neglect the handwritten one just for the beginning of learning.
Yeah.
And it worked out in the beginning. So
Yeah, even like modern exams
Yeah.
don't even require you to do handwriting. Like for example, I did my Japanese exam, like the N5, which is the lowest, and there's no writing there. You just straight up don't do any writing.
Mhm.
You recognize things. You have to
Yeah.
recognize characters. You have to read. You have to understand. You have to listen, but you don't write anything.
Yeah.
So it really makes it a lot less nerve wracking,
Yeah.
even though the exam is still hard without it. Don't get me wrong; it is still it's still pretty hard. But at the same time, it is not as demanding on the hand side, and you usually tend to ignore it, which I think it's a shame for the most part, actually, because there are a lot of advantages to just getting you familiar with the stroking like characters. I can apply it more for Asian languages because I did it also in Chinese. The characters are very complex, a lot more complex than the average ones, and you have to learn how to do them. You have to learn the order of it, and if you
Mhm.
do it even in the wrong order, even though they look perfect, they can tell. I don't know how they do that, honestly. They have a superpower, but it did give you a lot of more appreciation of the language, and it also makes you feel cooler because it's like you can write a character super fast. I'm basically a local now that I can write this character, so I wouldn't neglect the written part. But of course, like
Mm.
alphabets and characters are very different, so I'm not gonna go too much into depth on that part.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. So let's just have Michelle come back in. Everything went well with the package.
Yes.
All right. So so yeah, it is interesting to see like the approach because now like when you started it, it was pretty like it was a lot more accessible technologically, right? Or was it still like traditional the way that you approached Russian?
well, because it was later, um, I'm just trying to remember, but
No worries.
yeah. So the great difference, the big difference was that at that time uh, I already had my smartphone, applications like WhatsApp and so forth. So yeah, I would say that actually using these messengers was also a great way to get fluent and to yeah to practice my Russian, because I remember I spent a lot of time chatting to my friends, to many people, and the way we chat, on WhatsApp and so on, uh, helps a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, for at the first stage when you are still unable to speak. So yeah,
I'd argue that it's useful in any point of your language learning journey. I think the ability to talk to somebody real and like an actual person, an actual, it doesn't have to be necessarily a native, but like someone that wants to learn languages with you, wants to help with you, has advantages all throughout. Because that's one of the greatest thing about languages is the ability to connect to people, the ability to have somebody with a different background, a different entire way of speaking and understanding them. So it is interesting to see, and again, it creates long-lasting connection by languages, which is the name of the podcast. That's a little bit of a hint for you.
And now that you actually said you became fluent in Russian, it would be super interesting for me to know, was it ever a problem that you didn't learn the handwritten version of Russian, or did you like make it?
right. Thank you for asking this question, because it almost was a problem. 2 years ago, I did an exam, something like FC, but in Russian it's called TOEFL 2, B2 level. And unlike, for example, Cambridge exams, where I remember that I did the writing part using computer keyboard.
Mhm.
In this exam, we had to write in a paper. And although it was allowed, we were allowed to use those capital letters, no handwriting. I realized it was quite a big disadvantage for me because handwriting is usually faster. Yeah, we write faster, more quickly. And I remember that I struggled and I hardly finished the three tasks, the three texts. And as a result, I think I lost some points because of that, because I didn't have enough time to like review my text. But really, it was the only, I guess it was the only situation, but
Mhm.
as you see, quite quite important one, right?
Mhm.
But other than that, not really. Yeah, I mean, nobody has sent me a letter or a podcast
Okay.
written
Yeah.
in handwriting.
I was so actually what you just told us, like, it has been in this exam situation, which is, as you said, quite important, but not really real life, because an exam is always kind of a test situation, but not the real
Yeah,
life.
but because I was not thinking of that. I think that the other method would have been like the normal one, and like cursive is when you're like super skilled. But I guess because your exam, which I would love to learn more about your decision to take, by the way, like it was, you said that it was a C1 exam or like
B2.
B2,
B2.
B2.
Yeah, that's still pretty high regards when it comes to an exam. It's definitely not an easy jump to make. So, like
Mm.
peeling back, like you said that you did this exam, and that's phenomenal that you did. But I wanted to ask you, like, what brought you to that decision to make an exam? It's like, why? Like, was there a specific moment that made you like, oh, I want to do a formal exam out of this language?
I guess that at some point I realized I felt that I would like to not end my my learning journey, because it's never ending, of course, but yeah, to kind of finish certain period or a stage. Yeah, let's have like a point,
Yeah.
and maybe I was thinking some some ways to use Russian in my professional life.
Yeah.
So there were a few reasons, but maybe the unconscious one was to, okay, I had been learning something for maybe 8 years. Okay, so let's have a proof as well
Yeah.
that I've achieved something. Also, just in case, you never know, right? In professional life, um,
It's funny to say the, oh, you never know, but as making an objective out of your like language learning journey, it is one of the most underrated and most like important part of language learning, because a lot of people come in, it's like, oh, I want to learn French because I don't know, like it would be cool. Then they don't set an objective, and then they get lost, and then they complain, and then they drop their language learning. So, like, it sounds simple to be like, oh, I want to do an exam, I want to like have a certification of my skills, but it is a very, very, I'd say, critical part in any
Mhm.
sort of language journey. Of course, objectives can vary. You don't have to specifically get like, oh, I need to get this exam in order to be good at a language. You could have something like, oh, I want to be able to speak to my husband and like his own native language, or I want to be able to talk to the cashier without embarrassing myself in front of everybody.
Or I want to be able to make a friend in that language, maybe.
Yeah, making a friend and making a connection by language. That's again the name of the podcast. Number two. Let's see how many plugs of the names of the podcast I can have in this episode. Stay counting for the people watching from home. But yeah, like making a friend, sharing a joke that it makes sense, or like making a joke, being funny in a different language is completely like one of the hardest thing to do. There's so many different objective, but it's important to set one. It
Mhm.
is important. People forget it. I forgot it many times. Don't ask why. I forgot it many times. But in general, yes, it sounds simple, but it is
Mm.
extremely classic. It's a classic reason, and a very, very valid reason at that.
Yeah.
But like you seem to be like someone that kind of like you already had a lot of experience in the world of talking to other people that are native. Like you had your own fair share of online language exchange. So you already had an experience using Tandem before. Am I correct?
You mean before the exam, or
Before, after, like any time during your language journey, like you already used Tandem before in general, like before today, let's just say that. Before today, you already used Tandem, right?
for many years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
would say 8 years at least, probably more. Yeah,
wow. Like that's
Yes.
kudos for that one.
yeah.
Kudos for that one. That's a long time, and that's a lot of different experiences, a lot of
I've never had
conversations.
premium though. I've never had premium, but
That's fine too.
even without that, I met many interesting people. Yeah, both online and in person. So it has worked well.
And you have told us about Rosetta Stone before, where you were like kind of, you could talk to people randomly and have a language exchange with people from all over the world, and that you have used Tandem now for around 8 years. How did that experience evolve over time for you, the language exchange experience? And where did it lead you?
Hmm. Well, the first thing I'd like to mention is that what I appreciate the most is that I actually met a few great people in person. I mean, and we are still in touch. For example, there is a Turkish friend I met when I was maybe 20, 25 years old, 15 years ago, and we've been still in touch, although we met just twice. But it's one example, yeah, how it can also, how to say, enrich your life. Okay. Uh, and if I move to Tandem, which I started to use later, of course,
Mhm.
again, I happened or I managed to meet a few interesting people when I was traveling in, for example, in Georgia and other countries. So that's something that I value more a lot. I'm sorry, and with some of them, we have even done some, like postcard exchange, sending
Classic.
each other letters. Yeah. So I would say that I always kind of tend to maybe move this interaction, if it works,
Mhm.
yeah, into real life, because I don't know like you, but I'm one of the people who are a bit tired of being online all the time, due to work and everything. So I'm always happy if it can shift into, let's say, our offline life too.
The fact that again you can take a nap, not a nap, an app. Sorry, not take a nap. It sounded so much like taking a nap. No,
You
taking
can dream of the languages.
you can, yeah, but then you don't need to be online for that. You can just sleep. So it doesn't work in this kind of situation.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that you can go download an app, connect to the internet, being able to easily connect to anybody, and finding people, like you said, that share your views, and being able to then have the experiences and enrichment of your life in person. So it is weird because it's like the online aspect, I think it's an extremely important one. But it's so nice to be able to see people that have taken Tandem, which is an app that, like, it is a language learning app, but it's also about making long lasting friendships, long lasting connections,
Mhm.
to be able to see somebody that's taken to the next level and doing and being in unexpected places. Let
Mhm.
me ask you, what other unexpected places or unexpected experiences did you had on Tandem, or like a little bit outside of the app as well? Like, you mentioned like a trip to Georgia. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Um, so I spent about 7, 8 weeks in Georgia 4 years ago, and yes, I was exploring the country, working remotely from Tbilisi, from the capital, for a while, and then traveling a bit around. Um, one of the reasons was actually that I had always wanted to explore the country. I'd heard amazing things about
Mhm.
the beautiful nature, mountains, people, and so forth. But I also knew that it was a chance to actually, venture out and actually use my Russian more often, because it's one of the post-Soviet countries, and Russian is still somehow used, but understood fairly well.
Mhm.
So, but you mentioned the relation to tandem. I remember that back then. So uh, before I went, I just needed to also. I wanted to ask some locals about, some tips, where to go, what to do, what not to do, and I realized that tandem is also a good way to do it, because some people, not all of them, but some people like to share their experience, information about their country, about their homeland. And this way I happened to meet, how many? I think like 3 or 4 nice people. We are still in touch until now.
That's nice.
So it was nice.
So
And
would you?
all of that, okay, I should add that all of that was done without premium, but with
That's fine.
premium would be even nicer, maybe, because you can, as far as I know, you can really connect with someone from the same city, right? Or
Yeah, exactly. So if you have Tandem Pro, you have two location-based options. So you can either meet somebody that lives close to you, or you can use the travel function and then also like get to know people to places you want to travel to. So these make it a bit more easier. Exactly the things that you just described, that you wanted to like get to know Georgian people and then
Mhm.
can get in touch with.
And also getting information about the city, because like for example, some people that I've met have been using it for the travel in Brazil, but they couldn't like go to just Rio de Janeiro. They wanted to go to a specific city in the coast, and they managed to find people from there and
Yeah.
share bunk bed with them. So it was a whole different adventure. And I used them myself out of curiosity to find like people that are Armenian speakers in Berlin, which is a language that I'm interested in. So I could just be like, oh, okay, that person technically lives very close to me, so you can meet them and you can have talks with them. So there's a lot of applications of the pro version. But again, to connect with people, you don't need to be in pro. All of the connecting features, like the one-on-one chats, are all available in the free version of Tandem.
Mhm.
So you
Yep,
can
yep.
easily find people. And we found a lot of very guess a case studies on how it is used. Yeah. But let's now steer a little bit of an interesting direction, because your life, while it was full of travel and like opportunities to apply your Russian skills all over the world, had a pretty big, like I'd say, not roadblock, because it's not the right word, but rather like a big moment of testing, a little bit more of a serious testing. So maybe I'm gonna give you a little bit more like freedom to explain what the situation was um, in February of 2022. Something specific happened, and you were involved uh, with your Russian language. Could you tell us a little bit more of what happened?
Mhm. So when the invasion happened in 2022 in February, almost immediately quite a lot of big numbers of Ukrainian refugees started arriving in the Czech Republic, including my city, of course. And almost immediately, people started gathering help, and there were different ways to help, from providing the refugees with shelter, food, I don't know, clothes, anything, simply because there were a lot of people. But apart from that, so we had a big refugee center set up in my city, and there was a need for volunteers who could speak Ukrainian or Russian, and so I immediately became interested. And although back then, my Russian level was lower, it was actually before before the trip to Georgia where I got much more fluent. But I kind of pushed myself a bit, and I said I would give it a go, and so I applied, and yeah, I spent some days volunteering, basically providing some basic information to the refugees who came to to register, to get health insurance. They were provided some help, accommodation, and so on. So I was one of the people who just gave the most important basic information. But yeah, so my level was basically sufficient, and also I guess the situation itself, forces you a bit to just get efficient,
Yeah.
get the job done, and don't focus too much on some grammar,
Yeah.
pronunciation,
especially
and so
because
forth.
especially because the concept that you were giving to them were pretty, I'd say, technical, like elements, like explaining the way that to get health insurance and all bureaucratical stuff and basic information. Like it sounds basic, but I do think that having the ability to explain those precise things, because if someone
Mm.
messes up telling you how to do a certain bureaucratical process, it can cost a lot. Not like actual cost, but what I'm saying is that you have to be pretty precise in the moment. Or at least that's something that I would assume. Maybe in the moment you kind of can get a lot of information, like a lot of information pretty quickly.
And what did it feel like for you after like having this experience of learning Russian for fun and for your own interest, knowing that like using the language now for people in front of you with really high stakes because it was their real life depending on it. Yeah, what did that switch or that situation feel like?
Yeah, well, it's true that up until this moment, um, there weren't really any, let's say, practical opportunities to use my skills. Yeah, because it was only, as you said, for fun, making friends. I don't know, understanding my favorite song, for example.
Yeah.
But then I realized that yeah, it happened to be useful, and I also knew that since the people were coming in high numbers, that I could do a little bit more. So I also remember that my Russian friend who lives in my city and we also set up a Telegram group for where the refugees could, exchange some information among themselves. So yeah, at the beginning, I tried to do a little bit more, answering questions and some comments on in the groups that immediately were created. And yeah, later on, it developed further. I actually also met a few people. Once again, with some of them, we've been in touch for 4 years almost. Yeah, since the beginning. I've met a
Mm.
few other, and yeah, but
Yeah.
there are so many other, stories or uses, language exchange, helping with Czech because all of these people need to practice Czech.
Mm.
But that's
Yeah.
another story.
That's a whole like different kind of worms, but it's
Mm.
interesting to that you mentioned the perspective for the people coming in, because that's something that I'm interested in kind of getting to know more. It would be kind of interesting to see, like from their perspective, because a lot of people coming from Ukraine coming to the Czech Republic, they they have a lot of pressure on them to also like being able to ask for the information that they're looking for, or like getting the information, asking for the right information. So I wanted to ask you from your own perspective, like what did working in that environment, that pressureful environment, I guess it's not a word, right? It's a
Environment with pressure.
environment with a lot of
Yeah.
pressure teach you about like the relationship between how people how people treat the language and their own identity in these sort of like dire situations, like it's not for fun anymore, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, well, one thing I could mention is, of course, that the communication was kind of straightforward because it,
Okay.
it was about getting certain information or processing some stuff like, as I said, insurance and things like that. So I wouldn't say they they cared that much about, for example, the language we used, because I remember there weren't as many people who actually spoke Ukrainian back then. Um, and of course, there were many volunteers, different ages, different age groups. But I would say that from the Czechs, at least, most of them used Russian.
Yeah.
And I remember just maybe very few cases when someone I maybe just heard that someone was against it, and he you know like insisted on using Ukrainian. But okay, in addition, there were a few cases when people actually didn't speak Russian,
Mm.
because some Ukrainians from, for example, the western parts of the country uh, don't speak Russian. And then in these situations, I would say that the Slavic background, the Slavic thing, helped, because we can still understand reasonably. Yeah. So if you
Okay.
speak a few Slavic languages, or even if you speak one, then you are usually able to understand at least three more, if not more.
Okay. That's a lot of languages that you can understand from one. I like, if in my mind I was like, it's kind of like the same. If you know one Latin languages, you can understand the
Mm.
other. But like,
Mm.
tech, is it not
Not
really?
spoken.
Not spoken.
Written a
Written,
bit,
yeah.
yeah.
Written, yeah. But spoken, not so much. And in this situation, I would assume that there is a lot of speaking and a lot of writing,
Mm.
especially handwriting. I don't know if there's a ton of it. But it's interesting because there are definitely like a lot of other languages that tend to have these similarities. Like, if you go to the Balkan regions, every kind of language can understand each other. So it's very easy to get that type of transition. But like Slavic languages do still have from what I gathered, a lot of differences. So it's nice to see that at least the system was pretty organized, all things considered, and everybody managed to kind of like put their differences aside and being able to speak the language that it was the most common with people, like
Hmm.
stuff. And I'm glad that you were there and you managed to keep like that sort of help. Even again, you said that it's basic information, but it is not like it may be basic from like the objective standpoint, but from the overall like importance scale, it is very high. So it is definitely something not to undermine.
Yeah, I mean, the people were grateful that there was someone who understood their language. So even this fact uh, meant a lot for them, because otherwise you are in a new country, you don't understand the language, you don't speak English, and
There are tons of situations like this coming in, like even Italy as well. Like a lot of people come in and they
mm,
don't get the help they need when they come into a country. So it is rare. I mean, it's definitely, there are resources all over the world to help, but they're not as available as you may think. But in this situation, it's like particularly important. So yeah.
And what did the situation maybe do to you as a Russian learner that like a classroom or an app could have never done?
mhm. Well, I guess well, for sure, it gave me more confidence. That was the crucial point, crucial benefit. And yeah, some overcoming some kind of fear. That's not related only to Russian, but I would say it's like a skill in general
Yeah.
in this case. But well, I could mention some practical things. I realized that I also realized more deeply how also the Russian language is divided. I mean that Russian has also some varieties. You know, like in English, we are used to we have American English, Irish English, Scottish English, and so forth. And Ukrainian Russian is, is quite different from the Russian which is spoken, for example, in St. Petersburg or Moscow. So thanks to this, I started realizing these differences. So it was in some way also enriching.
And all things considered, like the ability to now start thinking about the differences in a language is an entire new tier of understanding a language. It's like the same thing as being like, oh, now I can differentiate between Scottish English and Irish English. That's like the fact that you can even understand the two different types now. That's elite level learning. So it may like it definitely is a very important step into language learning, and congratulations for you now understanding the differences, because it is a very important milestone. I should
Mm.
say like a very like it is important, but and that's not the word that I was trying to say, like a very impactful milestone, and it gives that extra layer of being able to connect even deeply more with a language. So congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
And maybe as a follow up question to wrap it all a bit up, like after these different stages in your relationship to Russian that you had, like the years of building it, the Georgia trip that you did, and also like the work with the refugees, like what did it, or how did it influence your relationship to Russian, to the language?
Hmm. Well, I still, I mean, it just I realized again that it is indeed useful language, right? And like despite all the development, I mean, in terms of the politics and the war and so forth, I realized it was still worth continuing to learn it, because at the time, to be honest, I saw that a lot of learners of Russian and Russian teachers, for instance, they struggled. They faced some some challenges related to the situation.
Mhm.
Right? It's normal. I don't know how it was in the Second World War with the role of German, for example, but maybe there were some parallels. I don't know exactly. But it helped me. I remember, for example, when I was in Georgia, I attended a Russian meetup with the locals, which takes place once a week, and it was actually run by an American guy who spoke Russian fairly well, and the attendees were, I don't know, Italian, some people from different countries, and it's a nice memory because it made me realize that it's a language which is learned by so many people all around the world, uh, and yeah. Speaking of that, I could also mention a few well, maybe sources
Oh, okay.
or tools which I found very useful and helpful when I on my Russian learning journey.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Absolutely. We're very interested in knowing how people can start because Tandem
Mhm.
as a tool is kind of like it's a great tool to get to know people, but sometimes you may need that extra starting confidence or like the starting basics to kind of get familiar with the language first before doing the extra step and talking to a native. So absolutely, if you have some specific resources that you particularly enjoy, just list them. I would love to hear more.
Great, great. So this is not a tip for total beginners,
Okay.
but I remember when I reached about A2 B1 level, I found myself a bit stuck, and I didn't know how to progress. And about, my gosh, I don't want to even count the number of the years. Maybe 6, 7 years ago, I explored a great podcast called Russian with Max, which I highly recommend. And I've been a listener until now. So it's a podcast run by a guy from St. Petersburg who now lives abroad. And he has a podcast as well as he also makes videos. And yeah, he speaks about his life, like all these YouTube
Mm-hmm.
language, how to say, podcasters or bloggers do.
Yeah.
But he also tells people some interesting things about Russia, Russian culture, history. Yeah. So each episode is kind of nice, and listening to this guy helped me to kind of get further, to stay interested, stay tuned, as we say,
Yeah.
and it was a big help. So also I wanted to actually uh, say big thanks to him even this way. I hope that he will find new followers among your listeners. But a tip for maybe beginners could be a language school, of course. So
Of course.
great language school, uh, which I know is called Ruslang. It's a language school from Tallinn, Estonia, dedicated to just Russian.
Mm.
And once a year they organize something like a Russian week, or week with a Russian language and Russian culture. So each day they organize one online event. For example, something like a book club, when you read a short story and you analyze it with a teacher. This year they had a virtual tour in
Oh,
Tallinn, so something like a presentation about a city
yeah.
with a discussion. And yeah, so you can also attend a course. You can do it both online and as far as I know, they also organize something like a summer school in Tallinn. So you
Oh,
can spend several weeks there and
so
learn the language online. Sorry, offline
yeah. And I mean, getting that
as well.
offline like practice is it's key to keeping your own motivation because that's the thing that is I think it should be the key aspect of learning
Mm.
this language. Finding that motivation to keep going and finding the consistency of getting better, even if it's small steps at a time or massive steps like a big old exam or being in the middle of helping refugees coming in. There's always needs to be that element that keeps your drive to learn languages because it is one of the I think elements that can run out of steam very fast if you don't have the right environment. So I hope that all of these different ways and projects can help out with people that are interested in learning this fascinating language. But I think for now this has been a fantastic episode of the Connected by Language podcast. Thank you so much, Petr, for being in the episode.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And if you have some other projects or like a personal project of yours or somewhere where people can learn more about what you do and your work, is there a specific place that people would find you? If so, I will put a link in the description. Can you tell us more?
hmm Well, I guess only if someone wanted to use service of a translator or a proofreader in a combination of English Czech, perhaps English Czech Russian.
Mhm.
They can contact me, for example, on LinkedIn. We can add my
Yeah.
my
You make
profile
sure
there.
I will put all of the necessary links in the description so people can see and connect with you. But in the meantime, thank you again, Petr, so much for being on this episode. And thank you guys for watching this episode of the Connected by Language podcast. Have you guys been involved with any sort of voluntary work regarding your language or your culture? If so, I would love to learn. And if not, maybe this is a great opportunity for you to find in something to be involved in, because there's always like a lot of personal, I guess, satisfaction on that, as well as helping others. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to this channel or follow us if you're listening to from Spotify or other podcasting places. And in the meantime, I wonder who's gonna come next on this episode of the Connected by Language. I'm very excited. I don't know about you, Michelle.
Yes, I'm excited too.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you can check some of our older episodes. And so until now, I've been your host, Michele. I've been joined by my co-host,
Michelle.
and I guess we'll see you on the next episode of the Connected by Language podcast. So, bye-bye.
Bye.